Well, as police reform takes center stage in Washington, churches across the country have also shifted their focus, putting the spotlight on racism and how the church should fight it.
There's all kinds of diversity in our church, and if I celebrate that diversity but never address the disparity, to me that's hypocrisy.
Because I'm willing to step into other people's reality so that I can feel what it's like to be them. The challenge is I don't often see that coming the other way, because if there's ever empathy, then we wouldn't see this lack of humanity.
Today, the Barna Group released a new survey on the church and racism. It finds 94% of pastors believe the congregations have a responsibility to publicly denounce racial discrimination. 76% of church leaders say the church should support peaceful protests, and about 62% of churches have already made a public statement about the recent protests. Well, joining us now is Brooke Hempel, the Vice President of the Barna Group, out with today's new survey. Brooke, great to have you here today. Let's start off with this. What's the biggest takeaway you learned from this latest poll, and how is it different from past polling?
Yeah, so those stats that you just gave are really shocking to us. The church has, as you heard from the comments before, been called out for not speaking up very specifically about racial injustice. So we'll often see churches pursuing programs of unity and diversity, but not actually addressing specific issues that are happening in our civic society. And so we're seeing a shift in this latest poll that pastors are speaking up from the pulpit, making very public statements saying that we do have race issues we need to deal with, and speaking out against what has happened in terms of injustices, whether that was George Floyd or other recent deaths, that they're saying Christians need to stand up and engage in this topic more intentionally.
Yeah. Brooke, that statistic, 94% of pastors believe the church has a responsibility to denounce racial discrimination. How are they going about doing that?
Yeah, right now it's mostly just speaking up, and actually many are taking a posture of listening, which is great. The next thing they're going to need to be doing is teaching. So you asked how this has changed over time. 2 years ago, we asked some pastors to tell us about how they taught and whether or not they taught much on the topic of justice. And at that point, only 6 out of 10 said that they even talked about the topic of justice, much less racial justice, from the pulpit. And so now you've got the vast majority saying, actually, we do need to engage in this conversation. We need to talk about this very intentionally. So I think you're going to see these pastors beginning to unpack that and really to help wrestle through. So this is what I need to believe and what I need to understand. And so how does that affect my actions? And for example, in supporting protests or other civic actions that could make a difference in actually law.
Brooke, while it is encouraging and great to see the numbers rise in supporting racial reconciliation and addressing these issues, for the 6% who didn't agree that the church has a responsibility, were you able to dig in and find out why, whether they don't see the problem or perhaps they feel like it's not the church's place, or maybe they fear action could upset certain members?
Yeah, it would be all of those above. And we've studied this in some research over the past 2 years where we've been digging into church dynamics. So some are concerned about upsetting members of their congregation who maybe they're not sure how they're going to take it. Others are concerned that it might feel like they're wading into politics inappropriately. And then some are just not sure how to handle it. And so they're feeling a little bit uneducated or maybe just unfamiliar with how to even talk about some of these topics. So those are some of the things that hold people back. But honestly, there's been so many who've gotten past those barriers in these last couple of weeks and said, you know what, I might not know the right thing to say, but we have to talk about this and I have to be honest about that. And it's better to engage in conversation than to just turn our face the other way. So we are definitely seeing that is a shift. We also have seen over the years that these things kind of rise and fall. So I'm hoping that's not the case this time, that this conversation will continue, but it wouldn't be uncommon for people to kind of subside after a while. So we really are just encouraging pastors to continue to step into that conversation, even if they don't feel like they know all the answers, but to just acknowledge what is happening and to acknowledge injustice. And then what is your role as a Christian to respond to injustice?
Just a few seconds left here, Brooke, but what's your sense? Do you think this could actually make the church stronger?
I do. I think there are many young people and many people of color who are feeling unwelcome in churches, and this is one of the reasons why. They want their faith to really integrate with every part of their life and to be meaningful. They want their lives to reflect that faith. And so they want to see the church rise up and speak out for others. And I think that that's going to be a very positive effect for many of them.
All right, Brooke Hempel, Vice President of the Barna Group, we appreciate you being with us on the day that you released your new survey. Thanks.